is so foul, the water is so messed up, and so many people are ill and dying of cancer.
Geraldine Watkins is afraid. Her family has lived in St. John the Baptist Parish in Louisiana for almost 40 years. She loves the people, but recently she learned that year after year, she and more than 20,000 others who live nearby have the highest risk in the country of developing cancer from air toxins. The toxin in this case is chloroprene. According to data from the EPA's National Air Toxics Assessment, or NATA, the risk for people who live in this area, highlighted in red, ranges from roughly 5 to more than 20 times the national average.
I was outraged because I'm trying to figure out why people hadn't been informed of this earlier.
The source is this plant owned by Denka. The Japanese company bought it from DuPont in late 2015. The company makes a synthetic rubber found in wetsuits, electric insulations, and other common products. The plant has emitted chloroprene as part of the process for more than 40 years. We asked the EPA for an interview. They declined, but agreed to answer questions via email. The EPA tells us 99% of the chloroprene that's emitted by facilities across the country comes from this plant. In 2010, the EPA determined chloroprene is likely carcinogenic to humans, meaning studies show it likely causes cancer in humans. And the EPA says there are many other health problems associated with exposure to chloroprene.
I grew up with a chronic kidney disease all my life.
Robert Taylor III says he grew up near the plant and that he was in and out of hospitals for most of his childhood. He moved away after high school and had no problems for more than 20 years. Then, just 6 months after moving back, Taylor says his kidneys failed. And Taylor says cancer diagnoses are common in his neighborhood.
Husband and wife died from cancer across the street. Husband over here died from cancer. Both of his sons got cancer. Where all this cancer coming from? These people filling us up with this poison.
In the spring of 2016, the EPA installed 6 canisters in the neighborhood surrounding this plant. They're collecting air samples. They're tested every 3 days to find out just how much of this toxic chemical is in the air. And for more than a year now, the EPA has repeatedly found concentrations of chloroprene that are 10, 50, 100 times, and in one case more than 700 times the amount it says is at the upper limit of acceptability for cancer risk.
They say it's 10 times or 20 times or some order of magnitude times higher than what a standard is. Well, there is no standard.
Chuck Carr Brown is Louisiana's Secretary of Environmental Quality. He's right about those spikes. The EPA has not set a legal limit for chloroprene emissions. It says it's a years-long process. But according to this May 2016 internal memo obtained by CNN, federal regulators have set a recommendation based on cancer risk, an annual average of 0.2 micrograms of chloroprene per cubic meter as what it calls the upper limit of acceptability. Just remember the number, 0.2. It's represented by the red line on this graph. Now, look at the average chloroprene concentration found in the air at those 6 testing sites between May 2016 and August 2017. One of those testing sites is here, near 5th Ward Elementary School, just a few hundred yards from the plant. We found that the average concentration in the air near the school over 17 months was more than 34 times the EPA's cancer risk recommendation of what's acceptable.
That is just...
The state's top environmental regulator, who says part of his mission is to protect human health, also says this.
And again, I say 0.2 doesn't mean anything to me. I want to get to as close to 0 as I possibly can. To artificially target a number that you can't legally enforce, it absolutely makes no sense.
Jorge Lavastida is an executive officer of the company and the manager of the plant. So this company doesn't believe that chloroprene causes cancer?
That is correct.
This summer, Denka asked the EPA for a correction. The company commissioned a study which argues that chloroprene's classification should be changed from likely carcinogenic to humans to possibly carcinogenic, and that 0.2 should be 31.2. More than 150 times the EPA's cancer risk recommendation.
We have looked at the study that they did with NATA and how they came up with that 0.2, and we have found gaps in the science of it.
The EPA stands by its findings. And despite its skepticism, the company promised the state to install control technologies at the plant to reduce chloroprene emissions.
That includes 4 projects that reduce our emissions by 85%. We're investing $20 million on those projects. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars of operating expenses when those are in. Very aggressive schedule, and it's our #1 priority.
However, equipment that was supposed to have been installed by September is now slated for the end of the year. Secretary Brown says there's nothing to worry about.
Best available control technology is an acceptable protocol.
But why not start with the risk to the people? Why not start with that number
That's exactly
and
what
then
I'm,
build out
that's
from
exactly
there?
what I'm doing.
Every time I've brought up the 0.2 number, you've said it's not enforceable, it hasn't been promulgated, it's not a standard. You go back to the technology and the enforceable standard there from whatever the company installs.
That's how
why
you
not start what the risk is to the people?
We've got a protocol in place that our data shows us there's no imminent threat.
You gotta live here to try and breathe the air, drink the water, see the children so sick, watch your people die. If you don't live in the area, you can say anything, and everybody's supposed to believe that. If they can't cut the emissions down, shut them down until they can repair them. Then bring the plant back up. I don't want anybody to lose their job, but we can no longer live in these emissions.
We're not just going to sit around and let them push us around. And
Taylor is part of a class action lawsuit to force the company to reduce the emissions to meet the EPA cancer risk recommendation. He's joined on behalf of his 10-year-old daughter, Navy Love. He says she developed asthma and needs to use an oxygen machine several times per week. He blames the emissions.
They don't have any compassion for human life. My little girl, 10 years old, she innocent.
You know,
And at 76 years old, Watkins hopes that federal regulators, state regulators, someone will force Denka to adhere to the cancer risk recommendation for her sake and for the sake of her family.
let me live. Whatever time I have left, let it be decent. We need clean air. We need help to get this done.
So an important question here, obviously, is are there more actual cases of cancer in those communities with the highest risk of developing cancer? Well, the state does not know, and here's why. Because cancer rates are measured at the parish level, not the smaller census tract level like the EPA toxin study. So right now there is no way to know if just that part of the parish around the plant has a disproportionate amount of cancer cases. But that is going to change soon because a new law in Louisiana requires the LSU Tumor Registry, which keeps track of cancer numbers, to publish cancer stats at the smaller census tract level. And then we'll be able to compare the EPA's estimated cancer risk to the actual number of cancer diagnoses.